is the water. This is the kind of water what we use it in this area, this whole area here. This is the water what we use. Stewartville new scheme, right? So now from here now we got a diabetic child. This child with type 1 diabetic. It is be expensive fund we for maintain this child. He had 1 year public assistance, and after that he didn't get back anymore. When we go for repeat back, they said that diabetic, you don't have public assistance for diabetics.
Welcome back, the learner, to your custom deep dive. You know, it's funny how we interact with the invisible architecture of our daily lives.
Right, the stuff we just take for granted.
Exactly. Think about just turning on a faucet. You walk into your kitchen, you push a handle, and instantly you have clean, pressurized, perfectly clear water flowing out.
It really is a modern miracle.
It is.
Yeah.
But we treat it with, like, absolute indifference. We only ever notice the plumbing when it breaks.
Yeah, when the tap runs dry.
Right. And when that happens, suddenly the illusion of our comfortable, frictionless world shatters, and you're left facing the raw physical reality of survival.
Which is exactly what our source material is about today.
Exactly. So today, we're looking at a dispatch originating from a group called Team Muhammad. It's brief, but it's incredibly potent. It's highlighting a severe local infrastructure crisis in a community where that invisible architecture we just talked about, well, it doesn't exist at all.
It's not broken, it's just not there.
Yeah. We are focusing on Stewartville, which is located in Region 3, where residents are completely lacking potable water.
Okay, let's unpack this. What are we actually looking at on the ground here?
Well, we're looking at a complete systemic absence. This text is a highly concentrated piece of advocacy. It outlines a scenario where the residents of Stewartville don't just have low pressure or, intermittent service.
Right.
They have absolutely nothing coming from the pipes. Instead, the dispatch explicitly states they are forced to rely on trench water for their most fundamental daily needs.
Oh, wow. Trench water.
Yeah.
Let's really look at the mechanics of what that means for a second, because the text lists 3 specific activities this trench water is used for. They say bathing, washing clothes, and cleaning.
It's just brutal.
It is. I mean, a trench is essentially an open excavation designed for drainage. It captures runoff, sediment, environmental contaminants.
Right, whatever washes off the road. Exactly. If you are pulling water from a drainage ditch to clean your body and your home, you're trapped in this paradox. You're attempting to sanitize your environment using a tool that is inherently compromised.
And the authors of the dispatch, Team Muhammad, they're very deliberate in how they frame this daily routine. They use 2 specific words to categorize the situation. They call it unacceptable and unsanitary.
Unsanitary is a strong word there.
Very strong. By leading with unsanitary, the advocacy group is elevating this from just, a mere municipal inconvenience to oppressing public health hazard.
Right, it changes the stakes completely.
Exactly. They're establishing the visceral sensory reality of the problem, the grit, the exposure, the lack of basic dignity, before they even introduce their demands to the government.
Which brings us to the actual demand the residents are making. And this is where the strategy of the dispatch gets really interesting. Because when you outline a problem that severe, like a total lack of sanitation,
you'd expect a massive demand, right?
Right. You naturally expect them to say, we need a multi-million-dollar water treatment facility built immediately. But instead, the text reveals their short-term request is just for a single standpipe to ease their burden until a reliable, potable water source is established.
It's just a basic communal vertical pipe with a tap installed out in the open where people can just manually fill buckets.
That is the absolute floor of water infrastructure.
It really is.
I was trying to figure out why they would ask for something so minimal, and it actually reminds me of a hostage negotiation tactic.
Oh, really? How so?
Well, think about it. If you're barricaded inside a building and you demand a helicopter and $10 million, the police are going to stall. They'll form committees, analyze logistics, all that.
Right, because it's a huge ask.
Exactly. But if you demand a couple of pizzas so the hostages can eat, you force the authorities to act immediately. Saying no to pizza makes them look entirely unreasonable.
That's a great analogy.
Right. In this scenario, being like, we are in a sinking boat. Don't give us a new yacht. Just give us a single bucket to bail water. The standpipe is a bucket. Or the pizza, I guess.
Yeah, that captures the political mechanism perfectly. because by demanding a temporary standpipe, the residents are actively stripping away the standard bureaucratic defenses.
Right. You can't stall on a pipe.
Exactly. When citizens demand a permanent plumbing system, a government can legitimately argue, well, that requires complex urban planning, environmental feasibility studies, long-term capital allocation.
We need 3 years to do a study.
Right. Those things take time. But a standpipe, that's a low capex immediate installation. You're just tapping into an existing main line and running a PVC pipe to the surface.
It totally traps the politicians. You can't claim you need a 3-year feasibility study to install a single communal tap.
It corners the ministry completely.
Yeah.
The residents are acknowledging that a permanent fix takes time. They're projecting themselves as patient and reasonable.
Just give us a stopgap measure.
Exactly. And by emphasizing they only want this stopgap to temporarily, quote, ease their burden, the lack of government action is no longer framed as logistical delay. It's reframed as a failure of basic human empathy.
But, there is a risk there, isn't there?
What do you mean?
Well, if the government actually comes down and installs that single standpipe, doesn't that let them off the hook? The immediate crisis is slightly mitigated, the cameras go away, and Stewartville might be left fetching water in buckets for the next decade.
Oh, absolutely. That is the perpetual danger of accepting temporary infrastructure. The temporary often becomes permanent through sheer inertia.
Right. People just get used to the bucket.
Yeah. However, the dispatch suggests the situation has reached such a critical threshold that the long-term strategic risk is secondary to the immediate physical need to stop bathing in a drainage trench.
Which is completely understandable. So the modesty of that standpipe request is highly strategic.
Right.
But it only works as leverage if the authorities actually acknowledge there's a problem that needs solving. And that is where this local grievance violently collides with the national narrative. The dispatch notes that an organization referred to as WWIN has joined the residents to call on the Minister of Utilities.
Yeah. They're bringing in organized backing.
So they are building a coalition. And who are they asking? What's the official response here? Because the text centers its frustration on a very specific claim made by Minister Teixeira.
Right. Minister Teixeira stated that 98% of Guyanese have access to potable water.
Okay, 98%. And the source's response to that is a direct, fully capitalized rebuttal, calling Minister Teixeira's 98% claim a LIU.
In all caps. They're not holding back.
No, they aren't. And real quick, just as an impartiality check for you, the learner, we always have to say this when things get political.
Always.
We're not taking a political stance here, and we aren't verifying whether the 98% figure is technically true or false. We're simply analyzing the deep frustration expressed in the source text and how the authors use the statistic to argue their point.
Exactly. We're looking at the rhetoric.
Right. So looking at this purely from an analytical standpoint, let's play devil's advocate for a second.
Okay, let's do it.
Mathematically speaking, an access rate of 98% means 2% of the population remains unserved. In a country of any significant size, 2% represents thousands, potentially tens of thousands of people.
True.
So couldn't the government statistic be completely accurate? And Stewartville just unfortunately falls into that remaining 2%. Why does the source immediately label this statistic a lie rather than just pointing out they are the exception?
That's a great question, and it really gets to the psychology of statistics and advocacy. You're identifying the inherent friction between macroeconomic data and micro-level suffering.
Right.
On a spreadsheet, 98% is an overwhelming success. It signals near total market penetration for utility.
You'd get an A+ in school for a 98.
Exactly. But human beings don't experience infrastructure on a national average. They experience it at their specific address.
Right, when they turn their own tap.
Right. So to a family washing their clothes in muddy runoff from a trench, a national statistic of 98% is not just irrelevant, it feels insulting. It operates as an erasure of their lived reality.
Because broadcasting a 98% success rate essentially tells the public, the problem is solved, we did our job, everyone go home.
Precisely. It breeds political complacency. The advocacy group understands that if the national narrative accepts that 98% figure, the urgency to help Stewartville just evaporates.
Wow, yeah, I see that.
Therefore, the dispatch cannot simply concede the math and politely ask for help. It has to actively attack the credibility of the denominator.
How do they do that?
Well, the text broadens the scope. It explicitly states, quote, "The situation in Stewartville is not an isolated case. There are many more communities without water."
Ah, okay. So they're weaponizing the gap between the official data and the ground reality.
Exactly.
They're saying if you walk through Region 3 and see multiple communities living like this, that 98% number cannot possibly be structurally sound.
It is a textbook method for destabilizing a political narrative. The government uses a massive, abstract number to demonstrate competence. And in response, Team Mohammed and Guyane use a vivid, localized, highly sensory reality trench water to demonstrate incompetence.
They are dragging the debate out of the sterile environment of government reports and forcing it into the unsanitary mud of Stewartville.
That's exactly what they're doing.
This intense frustration over being statistically left out is just palpable in the text. But the authors don't stop at debating utility metrics, do they?
No, they take it a step further.
They take this local dispute and magnify it by tying it to the broader economic status of the country. And here's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
This leads to a sentence that completely shifts the paradigm of the entire dispatch.
Oh, this is the most heavily weighted rhetorical phrase in the whole text.
Yeah. The source explicitly states that forcing residents to use trench water is, quote, completely unbefitting of an oil-rich nation.
Those three words, oil-rich nation, radically alter the stakes of the argument.
They really do, because up until that phrase, the text reads as a severe but kind of standard municipal grievance, you know.
Right, like, our pipe is broken, minister, please fix it.
Exactly. But dropping oil-rich into the text changes the entire baseline of what is considered acceptable suffering.
Totally.
I mean, if you are living in a developing nation with limited capital, infrastructure failures are generally viewed as a tragedy of circumstance. You might be bathing in a trench, but you understand the National Treasury simply doesn't have the funds to lay miles of subterranean pipe.
Right, the lack of resources is a shared collective burden. Everyone is kind of in it together.
But the moment a nation discovers massive oil reserves,
The psychology of the citizenry shifts overnight, even if the actual physical infrastructure is going to take decades to catch up.
and the dispatch leverages this exact psychological shift by juxtaposing the extreme local poverty of trench water against the macroeconomic wealth of being an oil-rich nation. The authors utterly destroy the defense of limited resources.
It implies the money exists. The capital is there, sitting in a bank or a sovereign wealth fund, but it's simply not being deployed to Stewartville. It frames the lack of a standpipe, not as a lack of resources, but as a failure of distribution.
It turns a tragedy of circumstance into a tragedy of choice.
That framing is devastatingly effective for advocacy. The underlying argument is that while a poor country might have to tolerate temporary hardships, citizens of an oil-rich nation bathing in a drainage ditch represents a profound moral failure by the state.
And specifically by the government and the Minister of Utilities.
Exactly.
It highlights a classic phenomenon in rapidly developing economies, doesn't it? You have this massive influx of foreign direct investment and GDP growth from a resource boom, but the physical infrastructure, the pipes, the roads, the power grids, it moves at a glacial pace compared to the speed of capital.
Oh, yeah. The citizens see the headlines about billions of dollars in oil revenue, but they walk outside and their daily reality remains totally unchanged.
And the advocacy group is exploiting that exact friction between those skyrocketing expectations and the lagging physical reality.
And by directing this argument specifically at the minister, the coalition is making it personal. They are demanding that the abstract wealth of the nation be translated into tangible, basic services for the most vulnerable communities.
They're using the nation's new macroeconomic identity to shame the government into providing a plastic bucket to bail out their sinking boat.
Yep, bringing it right back to your analogy.
It is so fascinating to dissect how much strategic leverage is packed into such a brief dispatch from WN and Team Mohammed.
It really is a masterclass in advocacy.
So the learner, to summarize our journey through this text today. We started with the visceral physical realities of Region 3. We looked at how the authors used the indignity of trench water to establish an immediate public health crisis.
Right, and how they strategically demanded a simple, low-cost standpipe to corner the government and remove those logistical excuses.
Yeah, and from there, we examined the collision of narratives. We saw how the dispatch directly attacked Minister Teixeira's claim of 98% access.
Rather than accepting their status as a statistical anomaly, the authors labeled the data a lie. They pointed to multiple struggling communities to shatter that illusion of overwhelming national success.
And finally, We unpacked the heavy rhetorical lifting of the phrase oil-rich nation. We discussed how introducing the country's national wealth reframes the lack of basic utilities. It forces the audience to view the crisis in Stewartville not as an unavoidable consequence of poverty, but as a deliberate and unacceptable failure of government prioritization.
It takes a population that feels erased by high-level statistics and gives them a rhetorical framework to demand immediate visibility and action.
It really emphasizes how advocacy isn't just about complaining loudly. It's about finding the exact pressure points, a temporary pipe, a disputed statistic, a national identity, and pushing on them simultaneously.
Absolutely.
Before we wrap up, I want to leave you, the learner, with a final thought to mull over or explore on your own. It's regarding that 98% access statistic we debated.
The tension between the majority and the margins.
Exactly. Think about this. When a government successfully solves a massive infrastructure problem for the vast majority of its population, the political urgency inevitably vanishes.
The public pressure just dissipates.
Right. The media moves on to the next crisis, and the massive budgets get reallocated. So if you are part of that final 2%, if you are living in Stewartville, does the government's declaration of overwhelming national success actually doom you?
That's a dark thought, but a very real one.
Does crossing the finish line for the majority guarantee that the minority will remain permanently trapped at the bottom of the priority list, just waiting for a standpipe that may never arrive? Does that remaining 2% actually become harder to fix because the political urgency has disappeared?
It's the tragedy of the last mile. When a crisis ceases to be a shared national emergency, isolated pockets of suffering become incredibly easy for a massive bureaucratic system to ignore.
Yeah. So the next time you walk into your kitchen and turn on that tap and that perfectly clear water flows out, take a second to consider the invisible architecture that makes it possible.
And the people who don't have it.
Exactly. Consider the strategic battles fought by those who are still waiting to be connected to it. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.